Imagine that everyone in the world lived with a tattoo on their head, and imagine that this tattoo has no negative connotations at all. It's a source of real pride and joy, both individually and in the community of all other people who have it on their head. The thing about having a tattoo on your head, however, is that as you go about your day, you're probably going to forget about it. Maybe you'll have time to look yourself in the mirror in the morning, take note of it, but you probably won't have that much time to be fixated on it after that. And if you look yourself in the mirror consistently throughout your lifetime, you probably get used to it. It doesn't mean anything special to you anymore, even if originally it was a source of pride and joy. You simply can't focus on it for that long. You are a busy person after all. You have places to be, buses to catch, errands to run. Your mind, limited as it is, can't focus on what is not in its immediate periphery. It needs to concern itself only with the things that are right in front of it. And because this tattoo's on your head, it's not really in your line of sight. And so naturally you just tend to forget about it, both when you see it on yourself in the mirror and on other people as you go about your day. It's just another boring thing, something that's already a given, and nothing that inspires pride or joy in you. There may be many anthropological answers to be given to the question of why religion exists, but those don't interest me here. What seems far more interesting and far more important is an interior perspective, someone from the inside, someone who is religious, reflecting on this question as a means of self-understanding. After all, there's a particularly modern, either implicitly or explicitly anthropological interpretation of religion that sort of discreetly divides religions into different units. Abstract, static cohorts that sit neatly on the shelf, ready for the consumer to choose between. Carefully demarcated monads isolated unto themselves. I mean, think of how apologetics are very often done, especially here on YouTube. It tends simply to be the clear-cut division of Christians and Muslims and atheists and the like, and subsequently a lot of arguments not conducted in good faith at all tend to ensue. The premises of classical theism, after all, remind us that when we speak about God, we're not talking about just a particular being. And so we can't really conceive of God as though he were one particular thing belonging to one particular tribe. If we're taking seriously the claim that God is a universal creator, the necessary being within which all created beings have their being, we can't then have the claim that God is just one particular thing. We need a universality in the way in which we relate to him. Notice, conversely, how pretty much all of the language used in apologetic debates attempts to narrow God, to limit him, to have him conform to a particular creed or orthodoxy. Yes, there are absolutely valid and honest disagreements between religions, and I'm not contesting that at all. But what I am contending is that I don't think people who posit the existence of an absolute, infinite creator God quite understand the implications of what they believe. The infinitude of God is generally sort of taken to be just an extreme characteristic, in the same way that Messi is extremely good at football or Rory McIlroy is exceedingly good at golf. It's important to understand that in the classical theistic traditions, God is indivisible, which is to say he can't be separated into parts and then sort of put together again as a coherent whole. I, as a limited human subject, am divisible. I can talk about myself over here and then my feelings or my characteristics over here as two separate things. It would be categorically incorrect to predicate this sort of division in God, to assume that God is just some subject who then has properties added onto him, which I believe should be another reason to be a bit suspicious of the way in which God is limited by our theologies and our apologetics. I think if we are responding to a universal creator, we have to do so not in the manner of more particular, narrow epistemic borders, drawing ourselves lines around the camp and then insisting that God is in there too. But rather we need to be a lot more open about the way we do religion, understanding that religion is absolutely not a matter of allegiance or a matter of simply assenting to a set of propositional claims on a piece of paper. Rather, what we call religion is more so the form that a life takes. its concerns, its orientations, its habits, what it does on a day-to-day basis, the rhythms of a normal life. Importantly, what this means is that when we move into that sphere that's generally considered religious, we go to a place of worship, we read a sacred text, we pray, we're not doing anything categorically different from the rest of life. Because God is not just something that you can have or not have when you're in a certain camp or not in a certain camp, it means he is the being of all beings, that which resides within you and within all things at once and equally. When we do religion, that's simply the process of trying to realize this. The concerted effort where we apply ourselves to let God manifest in all those places where he is already latent. And that involves necessarily drawing ourselves away from the distractions, the things that divert our attention from the fact that, yes, we have a tattoo on our heads. There is a mark of divinity within you. And that is what your life should be dedicated to realizing. Again, I don't want to be seen as diminishing the reality of religious difference at all. But I also believe there is a way in which we reify and ultimately idolize the differences between religion. And so, rather surreptitiously draw God into a particular camp, rather than first recognizing him in all things, and then secondarily doing religion in order to realize that. Yes, within that realization there will be particular propositional claims that are true and are false. And again, that's where the debate between religions should continue. But that shouldn't, I believe, be your first port of call. When you think of being religious, it shouldn't be about having an identity, being different from other people. It should first and foremost speak to life itself, speak to unity. And then the secondary question is just how you get that unity to manifest. As such, the question of what is religion is one that should continually return to us throughout the course of our lives. And given we so often see religion slip from those abstracted units into sectarian violence, we know it's not just a theoretical question, but it's an ethical one as well. It's a matter of carrying ourselves as a whole through life, not about just being right when it comes to a set of supernatural or metaphysical claims. That, after all, is what separates religion from mere philosophy. Religion certainly contains epistemic beliefs, but it's not limited by them. It transcends them by nature. It concerns itself with the entire reality of an embodied life, not just a cognitive difference between worldviews. There is an important and very happy qualification to be made to the analogy I gave at the start. The sense of awareness, the sense of being one with God, is crucially not just a thing that you can focus on, as you could just focus on a tattoo. Yes, religion as a whole is the process of focusing on particular things like sacred texts and places of worship and songs and sermons and everything in between. And this is all very important, but it's also very important not to mix that up with the real object of religion. This is all the process, once more, of realizing something that is always already the case, something that can be forgotten or ignored or even directly denied, but never erased. This is because it's not just a thing in the world, a particular object. It is the being of everything, the field of experience within which you can make a denial of its existence. Even the forgetting and the ignoring of that mark of divinity occurs within the field of absolute divinity itself. It just represents a complete failure to realize that. As such, when we talk in religion about non-attachment, about moving away from the world and toward God, this is exactly the same motion that you want to be making within yourself. Move away from your specific attachments, even if those are religious attachments, and move toward the unity which allows all of those attachments to exist in the first place. And once you move from particular beings to being itself, you realize quite beautifully that you don't actually need to move at all. After all, being can't be elsewhere. If you have any particular being in your life, if you have a person or career or reputation or anything that you want to make you happy and feel fulfilled, being is still fully present in that thing. It just gets covered up or forgotten when we mistake that thing for being itself. But crucially, the sense of fulfillment that we're seeking cannot, by nature, be in one particular object, such as a religion, for instance, because any particular object occurs within a field of being, a broader ground of unity, and so there's always something that exceeds it. The moment you've experienced anything in the world, you've experienced it, and so in a way transcended it, and are already, even if you haven't noticed it, looking for something else. Once we've made this clarification, we can begin to see, and not just speculate, but really see the difference tangibly that it makes to our lives, both as individuals and communities. So much of the world's suffering comes from the vain pursuit of things that will not make you happy. We as human beings are simply not seeing the world properly. It's covered in a veil, almost a half haze, a kind of dream. Religion is simply the process of waking up from that dream. And quite importantly, if we reify that religion, if we mistake it for the reality itself, then it can also, conversely, contribute to our illusion, keep us ignorant. If we continue to attach ourselves to particular things with fervent clinging and a refusal to let go. This language of letting go is crucially not rejecting anything. Again, you shouldn't reject your religion. That's the opposite of what I'm saying. But your relationship to it cannot be one that treats it effectively, even if implicitly, as though it were God itself. But when religion is done well, it is beautiful. It's beautifully lightly held, if you will, not clung to or bludgeoned over the head of other people with inflexible dogmas, but it's just the process of living toward the remembrance of that tattoo on your head. We go to special buildings to read books and sing songs and listen to speeches all about how we all have a tattoo on our head, because this is the best way to remember it. And so far as we can expand this orientation to encompass everything in our lives, we will become happier. Life is difficult, and it's easy to get lost along the way because no one really tells you where you're supposed to be going in the first place. But with the traditions, habits, customs, and wisdom accumulated by religion, we can begin to get our bearings and at last set off for home. Thank you for watching. Do please consider subscribing, comment if anything piqued your interest, and check out my writing on Substack too. I personally think it's far better than the content I make here, but that's just my opinion. I hope to see you very soon in the next video, and take care.